Oh, precious one, do you know? Do you really know what happens when God is about to do something big in your life? Oh, I tell you, before the blessing comes, before the breakthrough arrives, before the promise is fulfilled, there is a stirring, a shifting, a shaking in the heavens. And if you do not recognize it, if you are not sensitive to it, you might mistake it for trouble, for struggle, for delay. But listen to me, dear heart. God does not pour his greatest blessings into unprepared vessels. Before he gives you something big, he must first make room for it. And sometimes that means he has to remove what cannot go with you into your next season. Sometimes it means doors must close before greater doors can open. Sometimes it means he must separate you, set you apart, strip away what is small so that you can receive what is great. Oh, I know you have been waiting. I know you have been crying out, God, when? God, how? God, why does it feel like everything is falling apart? But hear me tonight. When it looks like things are being taken from you, when it feels like the waiting is too long, when it seems like the struggle is never ending. Look at Joseph. Before he sat in the palace, he was thrown into a pit. Look at David. Before he wore the crown, he was running for his life. Look at Esther. Before she became queen, she had to go through the process of preparation. Do you see it? Do you understand? The greater the promise, the greater the preparation. The greater the anointing, the greater the pressing. Oh, but don't you dare give up now. Don't you dare let go before the blessing comes. You are closer than you think. You are standing on the edge of something big, something only God could orchestrate. If you could see what he is preparing, you would not worry, you would not fear, you would not doubt. You would lift your hands and say, Lord, I trust you. I trust you in the waiting. 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 I trust you because I know my blessing is on the way. When God is about to give you something big, he first takes you through a season of preparation. He does not pour great blessings into unprepared hands. He does not elevate someone who is not yet ready to carry the weight of what he has planned. Before he entrusts you with something greater, he must first refine, mold, and strengthen you for what is to come. The process is necessary, even though it may not always feel pleasant. At first, the preparation may feel like a delay. You may wonder why things are taking so long, why doors are not opening, why it seems like everyone else is moving forward while you remain in the same place. But God is not withholding from you. He is working on you. He is developing the qualities you will need to sustain the blessing once it arrives. Without preparation, what is given too soon can be lost too quickly. A gift that comes before its time can become a burden instead of a blessing. Look at Joseph. Before he became second in command of Egypt, he had to go through a process. He was betrayed, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. It looked as though everything was going wrong, but in reality, everything was leading him to his destiny. In the prison, Joseph developed wisdom, patience, and leadership skills. Had he gone straight to the palace without the process, he would not have been ready to handle the responsibility that came with the position. David was anointed as king while he was still a shepherd boy, but he did not step into the throne immediately. Instead, he went through years of training, fighting battles, enduring hardship, and learning to trust God in the wilderness. His time in obscurity was not a punishment, but preparation. If he had stepped into kingship too soon, he would not have been able to lead effectively. God had to shape him first, test his heart, and build his character so that when he did take the throne, he would rule with wisdom and strength. Esther had to go through months of preparation before she could stand before the king. It was not an instant elevation. It was a process of refinement, purification, and positioning before she could walk in her purpose. She had to be made ready for it. The same is true for anyone who is chosen for something great. There's always a season of preparation before the promotion. The divine preparation often involves discomfort. It requires stretching, growing, and sometimes enduring situations that feel unfair. It may feel like you are being overlooked, forgotten, or delayed, but in reality, God is working behind the scenes. He is strengthening your faith, teaching you endurance, and removing anything in you that could hinder the blessing he is about to release. He is pruning away fear, doubt, impatience, and anything that would cause you to mishandle the favor that is coming. Many people want the blessing, but not the process. They want to step into the promise without going through the preparation. But God does not operate that way. He does not bless you in a way that will harm you. He will not place a crown on your head until he knows you can carry its weight. He will not give you influence, promotion, or increase until he knows that your heart is fully surrendered to him. During this time of preparation, obedience is key. If you resist the process, you delay the blessing. If you try to take shortcuts, you risk missing what God has for you. But if you trust him, if you surrender to his timing, if you allow him to do the deep work in you, then when the blessing comes, you will be ready for it. You will not only receive it, but you will be able to sustain it, walk in it, and use it for his glory. When God is about to give you something big, he often closes doors that no longer serve your purpose. What seems like rejection is actually divine redirection. When opportunities slip away, when relationships shift, when familiar places no longer feel right, it is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that God is moving you towards something greater. Closed doors are not meant to discourage you. They are meant to protect you from settling for less than what God has planned. At first, a closed door can feel painful. It can bring confusion, disappointment, and even frustration. You may question why something you wanted so badly was taken away. You may wonder why a job opportunity, a friendship, or a dream that once felt so promising suddenly came to an end. But what you cannot see in the moment is what God is preparing on the other side. He knows the full picture, and he closes doors that would lead you away from his perfect will. Look at Moses. He grew up in Pharaoh's palace. But God never intended for him to remain there. When the door to Egypt closed, Moses was forced into the wilderness. At first it seemed like a setback, but in reality it was a setup. It was in the wilderness that God prepared Moses to lead his people to freedom. Had the door to Egypt never closed, Moses would not have stepped into his destiny. Ruth experienced closed doors in a painful way. She lost her husband, her home, and everything she once knew. It seemed as though her life had fallen apart, but in reality, God was leading her to something greater. Had she remained in Moab, she would never have met Boaz. She would never have become part of the lineage of Jesus. What looked like a painful ending was actually a divine redirection toward a new beginning. When God closes a door, it is always for your good. He may be protecting you from something you cannot see. That job you did not get may have been filled with stress and frustration. That relationship that ended may have been keeping you from growing spiritually. That opportunity that did not work out may have been too small for what God has planned. What you see as rejection, God sees as redirect. He knows the way you should take. And he will not allow you to walk through a door that will lead you away from your purpose. A chosen person learns to trust closed doors. Instead of fighting to reopen what God has shut, she surrenders to His will. She does not waste time trying to make things work when it is clear that God is moving her in a different direction. She understands that if something was truly meant for her, no one could take it away. And if it was removed, then it was never part of God's best for her life. Closed doors require faith. They require trusting that even when you do not understand, God is still in control. They require believing that something better is on the way. They require letting go of disappointment and embracing expectation. Instead of mourning what was lost, a woman of faith looks ahead with anticipation, knowing that God never removes without replacing, never subtracts without multiplying, never takes away without preparing something greater. Many people miss their blessing because they refuse to accept closed doors. They keep knocking on something that God has already shut. They keep revisiting the past instead of stepping into the future. But a woman who trusts God knows that His ways are higher than hers. She does not settle for less just because it is familiar. She does not resist change just because it is uncomfortable. She moves forward in faith, knowing that every closed door is a step closer to what God has prepared for her. God is never late and He never makes mistakes. Every door that closes is part of His divine design. What you lose now is nothing compared to what He is bringing. The ending you did not expect is making way for the new beginning He has planned. What once felt like rejection will soon be revealed as protection. And when the right door opens, you will understand why all the others had to close. When God is about to give you something big, the waiting season is not wasted time. It may feel like nothing is happening, like prayers are going unanswered, like doors remain closed no matter how much faith you have. But the waiting season is never empty. It is a time of preparation, a time of transformation, a time where God is working behind the scenes in ways you cannot see. Waiting is one of the hardest things for a chosen person to endure because it requires trust without evidence, faith without immediate results, and patience in the face of uncertainty. It is in this season that doubts try to creep in, that discouragement whispers, that the enemy tempts you to give up. But a woman who understands God's process knows that waiting is not delay, it is development. God is shaping her, pruning her, strengthening her for what is ahead. If the blessing came too soon, she would not be ready to handle it. Look at Abraham and Sarah. God gave them a promise of a son, but years passed before that promise was fulfilled. The waiting tested their faith, stretched their endurance, and forced them to trust in God's perfect timing. When they tried to rush the process by taking matters into their own hands, it only created problems. But when they surrendered to God's timing, Isaac was born at the appointed time, not a moment too late. Joseph had a dream of greatness, but before that dream became reality, he had to endure years of waiting. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. Every step of the way, it seemed like his dream was further from coming true. But what looked like delay was actually preparation. In the waiting, Joseph developed leadership skills, humility, and wisdom. When his moment finally came, he was not just ready for the blessing, he was ready to sustain it. David was anointed king as a young man, but he did not step into the throne immediately. Instead, he spent years in the wilderness, running from Saul, learning how to trust God in difficult situations. If he had been crowned too soon, he would not have been equipped to lead Israel with wisdom and strength. His waiting season was not wasted. It was necessary. Waiting refines you. It teaches you perseverance. It deepens your faith. It forces you to depend on God in ways you never had to before. It strips away impatience, fear, and self-reliance, making room for greater trust in God's provision and plan. Waiting is where you learn to pray differently, to listen more closely, to surrender completely. A chosen woman does not resist the waiting season. She embraces it. She understands that God is never late. He is never indifferent. He is never unaware of her desires, her prayers, her struggles. She does not compare her timeline to others because she knows that what God has for her is unique. The blessing that is meant for her will not be given to someone else, and it will not come a moment too early or too late. Many people lose faith in the waiting season because they mistake silence for absence. But God is always working, even when He is quiet. He is aligning the right opportunities, shifting circumstances, positioning people, and preparing the heart of the one who will receive. Just because you cannot see it does not mean it is not happening. A seed does not sprout the moment it is planted. It takes time. And just as a seed grows beneath the soil before it is ever seen, so does God's work in your life. Patience and waiting is proof of faith. It is the evidence that you trust God's plan more than your own. A chosen woman does not try to rush the process because she knows that the best things take time. She does not settle for shortcuts or accept anything less than what God has promised her. She holds on, she believes, she remains steadfast, knowing that when the waiting season ends, what God is about to release will be worth every moment she spent preparing. When God is about to give you something big, the pressure increases before the breakthrough comes. The weight of trials, the intensity of spiritual warfare, and the challenges that seem to come one after another are not signs that you are losing, but signs that you are on the edge of something great. The enemy does not fight what does not threaten him. The pressure is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that the blessing is near. A woman who is chosen by God must understand that before elevation, there is always opposition. Before stepping into the promise, there is always a testing. Before stepping into the next level, there is always a season where everything seems to press against her. The pressure is designed to build endurance, to strengthen faith, and to prepare her to carry what God is about to release. Look at Job. Before he received double for his trouble, he went through an intense season of loss and suffering. Everything was taken from him, his family, his health, his wealth, but he refused to curse God. He held on to his faith even when everything around him was falling apart. The enemy thought he could break him, but Job's endurance under pressure positioned him for an even greater blessing. What he lost was nothing compared to what God restored. Joseph went through pressure at every stage of his journey. Before he was placed in the palace, he was thrown into a pit. Before he was given authority, he was placed in prison. Every time it seemed like things were improving, another wave of difficulty came. But what the enemy meant for harm, God used for preparation. The pressure did not destroy him. It positioned him. When his moment of breakthrough came, he was not just ready to receive, he was ready to lead. Jesus himself felt the pressure before stepping into his greatest moment. Before the resurrection, there was the cross. Before the victory, there was betrayal, suffering, and loneliness. The Garden of Gethsemane was a place of intense spiritual pressure, where he prayed so fervently that his sweat became like drops of blood. The pressure was unbearable, but it was necessary. Without it, the victory would not have come. Pressure reveals what is inside. It exposes weaknesses, fears, and doubts. It forces you to rely on God like never before. It pushes you to pray harder, to seek him deeper, to trust him more completely. A woman who understands the process does not crumble under pressure. She rises. She does not allow trials to make her bitter. She allows them to make her stronger. The enemy often increases attacks when the breakthrough is near. He tries to plant seeds of doubt, to make you feel unworthy, to make you question whether you heard from God correctly. He uses people, circumstances, and distractions to pull you away from the promise. But when you recognize his tactics, you do not fall for them. You stand firm, knowing that the storm is temporary, but the blessing is eternal. God allows pressure not to break you, but to refine you. Just as gold is purified in the fire, just as diamonds are formed under intense pressure, so is a chosen woman shaped through the trials she endures. The blessing God is about to release requires a strength that only comes through experience. If he gave it to you without preparation, it would be too much to handle. But because he is allowing you to go through the process, you will not just receive the blessing, you will be able to carry it with grace, wisdom, and endurance. Pressure precedes promotion. The greater the calling, the greater the pressing. The weight of the trial is often an indication of the magnitude of the breakthrough. Instead of seeing the pressure as a sign to quit, see it as confirmation that you are closer than ever to what God has promised. The moment of testing always comes before the moment of triumph. The darkness is always greatest before the dawn. The enemy fights hardest when he knows he is about to lose. And if you refuse to give up, if you hold on just a little longer, you will step into the very thing God has been preparing for you all along. When God is about to give you something big, your faith must go before the blessing. Faith is the activator. It is the key that unlocks the door to what God has promised. Before you see the manifestation, before you step into the breakthrough, before anything shifts in the natural, you must believe, speak, and act in faith. Faith is not based on feelings. It is based on trust in God's word. It does not waver when circumstances look the opposite of what God has spoken. A chosen woman understands that before the promise becomes reality, she must first walk as if it has already come to pass. She does not wait for evidence to believe. She believes because God said it, and that is enough. Look at Abraham. God told him he would be the father of many nations when he had no children. In the natural, it seemed impossible. His age, Sarah's barrenness, the delay, it all looked like a contradiction to what God had spoken. But Abraham believed, and his faith was counted as righteousness. He did not wait until he saw the promise fulfilled to act like it was true. He walked in faith before he held the promise in his hand. The woman with the issue of blood had faith before she saw her healing. She pushed through the crowd, believing that if she could just touch the hem of Jesus' garment, she would be made whole. She did not wait for proof. She acted in faith, and as soon as she touched him, power was released, and she was healed. Faith must be spoken. The power of life and death is in the tongue. A woman who understands faith does not speak defeat, doubt, or fear. She speaks what God has promised, even when her situation looks the opposite. She does not say, I am waiting for my breakthrough. She says, my breakthrough is coming. She does not say, I hope God will make a way. She says, God is making a way. Her words align with what she believes, and what she believes. Faith requires action. When God told Noah to build the ark, there was no sign of rain. When he told the Israelites to march around Jericho, the walls were still standing. When Peter stepped out of the boat, the water had not yet held him. Faith moves before the miracle happens. It does not wait for conditions to be perfect. It does not wait for human confirmation. It steps forward, trusting that God will do exactly what he said. A woman walking in faith does not let fear stop her. Fear whispers that it will not happen, that she is not worthy, that she is wasting her time believing for something impossible. But faith silences fear with truth. Faith remembers that God is not a man, that he should lie. Faith stands on his word even when everything else is shaking. Faith also requires patience. The promise does not always come immediately. Sometimes the delay is where faith is tested. But just because it has not happened yet does not mean it will not happen. God's timing is perfect, and when he speaks a word, it cannot return void. A woman of faith does not grow weary in the waiting. She keeps praying, keeps praising, keeps preparing for what is coming, because she knows that God is faithful. The enemy tries to steal faith because he knows that without faith the blessing cannot be received. He tries to plant doubt, to make the chosen woman question whether she really heard from God, to make her believe that the promise was not meant for her. But a woman who truly walks in faith does not let the enemy's lies take root. She guards her mind, stays in the word, and surrounds herself with those who speak life into her situation. Faith is not just believing in God's ability. It is trusting in his character. It is knowing that even if things do not happen the way she expects, God's plan is still good. It is resting in the truth that he has already made a way, even if she cannot see it yet. It is stepping forward with confidence, knowing that what God has promised is already in motion. A chosen woman understands that faith is the bridge between the promise and the fulfillment. And she walks across that bridge before she ever sees what is on the other side.